I don't know what Donald Trump did today. It's hard to keep up with him.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
And the only reason I say that is that I don't want you to tell anybody this, and I say that, you know, some of you already know. I know, Dan, you tape the show earlier in the day. We do, because I'm on the radio live weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO, and we record the show as if it's a live show earlier in the afternoon. And it just seems, I was just telling the fellas here today, it just seems like every time we think we got it figured out, Donald Trump does something in the afternoon to blow everything out. Yesterday, you had Congressman Jim Langevin here, and we talked about the weekends, you know, commentary, the Saturday commentary, and the Monday commentary. But of course, you just kind of felt the wheels coming off as that press conference ended on infrastructure and began on all things Charlottesville. It was something else. Great to have you aboard. Thanks for tuning in on this Wednesday evening. My guest this evening, first time ever. He has made the primetime list. Of course, he's pretty prime time in the legislature. He is the House Majority Leader. Joe Shekarchi is here, the state representative from Warwick. Is there any other part of the district that is it all Warwick?
It's all Warwick.
It's all Warwick. Good to see you, my friend.
My pleasure to be here, and I hope to come back.
Well, that'll be determined by you and me after we're done with this whole conversation.
I'm sure.
The day yesterday was something. I mean, there's a whole bunch of state stuff that I want to talk about, but everybody's
amazing.
Chatting about what's going on. You tell me what you think.
I sent a tweet out last night on my Facebook. He demeans the office of president, and by not condemning these crazy right alternate people or whatever they call themselves.
Well, he did condemn them. So
but by backtracking on them and not sending an unclear signal and not an unequivocal rejection, you let the David Dukes of the world and those kinds of people feel like that he wants them and he believes in their message, and you fuel all of the anti, establishment people who are normal and fair and reasonable. And these crazy people, these absolute right-wing hate groups, the neo-Nazi sympathizers, the white supremacists, if you don't unequivocally reject them, like many people in Congress have, like many prominent Republican has, Speaker Ryan has, Senator McCain has, Senator Lindsey Graham have, the Speaker put out something today, the Democratic Party put out something, I have to Republican credit, Scott Avedisian, Alan Fung have. But when you fail to do that and you're the president, you feed into them and you keep their hopes and ambitions alive, and it's sad. It's sad as a country.
You're a political student. You've not only run your own race, but you've helped major candidates along the way. What does this do to Republicans in general? In terms of the challenge that they have here?
Well, very interesting enough, if you're somebody like a Brandon Bell, I think it's hard.
The GOP chairman here in the state.
GOP chairman in the state who wants a federal appointment. It makes it hard for you to do that, but I think it's hard for the Republicans.
Who wants a federal appointment to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
That's only what I've been reading to one of the federal posts that will ultimately be filled by Rhode Islanders. So I don't know which one, but that's the prevailing wisdom or conventional wisdom in the state. But if you're somebody like him and you don't reject this, it's difficult to be credible among your party and among the state. But Trump's the kind of person, if you say something negative, like somebody on the Manufacturing Council did yesterday, he attacks you. So it's a difficult situation. If you're a mainstream, a moderate Republican, and for the most part, the Republicans in Rhode Island are pretty mainstream and pretty moderate, it becomes very difficult to run on the Republican banner. He is doing damage to the Republican brand, not only locally but nationally, and I think the damage you'll see in the next election cycle, and I think this is going to hurt the Republicans in Congress, particularly the House.
How much do you think state, Rhode Island and Massachusetts Republicans have a responsibility to speak up to these things, as opposed to just kind of wincing and saying, hey, it's 400 miles away?
No, they have to, especially in these kinds of situations. There are things you can take a pass on, and there are things you can mildly support or mildly reject. But when it comes to this type of extremism in the country, you have to, as a unit, you have to put your country first and your party second, and they have to stand up and do that.
I wish we didn't put it on the spectrum of left and right. I mean, we've fallen into quite the labeling habit in our political culture. Extreme right wing, you know, extreme left wing. Can't we find another description in terms of where these extreme views ought to lay on the platform of ideology? It just seems to, for those who have traditionally felt like they've been on the right, meaning that they're conservative, and those who traditionally feel like they've been on the left, meaning the liberal, there are these extreme positions. Why do we have to put them in the left and right category? I'm just daydreaming here, you know?
I think part of that is the media, and I think it's part of it is those groups want to be identified on that spectrum somehow. I think there's basically, I consider myself a moderate, and I think that, or a pragmatic moderate, somebody who wants to get things done, and I think that there are just people who want to have a stake out a position on that spectrum and stick to it, and they're very rigid in that, and then when they can't seem to move anything, they want to blame everyone else.
Well, identity politics is interesting. The racial identity stuff is becoming pretty caustic, but identity politics has been with us for a long time. Talk to me about the politics in the state of Rhode Island and the Democratic Party. I keep explaining to everybody, day in, day out, when the state issues are going on, that the Democratic Party here in Rhode Island is a much wider spectrum than people think. I mean, you are navigating, along with Speaker Mattiello, a pretty nuanced line with the growth of what is a very liberal faction grabbing seats in the General Assembly against what seems to be, at least on a fiscal basis, a more conservative approach by leadership on the Democratic side, yes?
Yes.
What's happening, and why is it happening?
It's happening because I consider some of it as like Bernie Sanders effect, that Bernie Sanders, and now even the Trump effect. He's woken up a lot of people who feel very concerned about what's happening. They can't act nationally, but they can act locally. I also think, the Democratic Party you talked about is a big party. It's a euphemism that's always used, the big tent, but it really is. We have people in our party who are very conservative and very traditional. We have people in our party who are very progressive and very non-traditional, and then you have those in the middle who try to be the bridge between both parties. And I think the Speaker has done a very good job of that, and I think the work product of the General Assembly shows that, and shows a good product that has both conservative, pro-business, tax cuts, job credit tax cuts. Also, in our budget, for example, this year, we passed the increase in minimum wage, and it's going to be in effect for 2 years. That's a very progressive issue. We passed free bus passes. That's a very progressive issue. Those both things were in the budget. We also put in,
By the way, one of the dumbest things I've seen the legislature do is to take those bus passes away from the needy and the elderly in the first go-around. I mean, this kind of breastfeeding on both the part of the House and the Senate about what kind of heroes they were putting that back was a little nauseating, Joe. It's just like, come on. I mean, it was pretty self-explanatory that those folks need those bus passes.
But there's a practical argument, too, while people from RIPTA who feel strongly that we have to be very careful about that, because what happens is the buses turn into just basically mobile homeless shelters. And people get a bus pass because it's cold in the winter, and they stay on the bus all day and all night. So you have to balance that. I know how things sometimes look, but you have to look at the reality and the facts. And there were people who said we should give reduced passes and help people get to jobs, because you have people who say, I take the bus every day to work, and I'm literally, there's a homeless person sleeping next to me on the bus. And that's not a good vehicle for the people. That RIPTA is to service people to work and to doctor's appointments and stuff like that. RIPTA was never designed to be a roaming homeless shelter. And that's a problem that we have to address. Panhandling, homeless shelters, all those things are evident in today's society. So we understand in the General Assembly we made a policy decision that we needed to reinstate those bus passes. But the other side, there were people who were against it, not for the reasons you think, not because they wanted the $1 for the fare or anything else, but because other people were afraid to take the buses, because there were homeless people on the bus and all day and all night. So you have to balance all that stuff, Dan.
All right.
And the other thing in the budget, navigating between it, we have free college tuition in the budget for students who go to CCRI.
Pared down from the governor's
Pared
idea.
down because it's a
Thankfully.
It has to be balanced. It has to be a cost-benefit analysis, and we also have good pro-business stuff in the budget, and we've done good pro-business stuff before. So that's how you navigate, and that's how the Democratic Party operates, at least in the House version of it.
So we had quite a melodrama, of course, this last session. We'll get the majority leader's take on that when we come back. In the meantime, let me just remind you that the folks at Navigant Credit Union would love to have you use their technology called Card Valet. All you have to do is open up an account at Navigant and employ the Card Valet app on your smartphone, and everything that is your banking will be right there in the palm of your hand. It is online banking hyper. It's just everything is there, and it's all right in the palm of your hand. Remember NCUA, of course. Navigant Credit Union online at navigantcu.org. Right back with Joe Shekarchi. Speaker Mattiello, of course, and he's appointed Joe Shekarchi. Of course, you ran for House Majority.
I was elected by the caucus.
Right,
yes.
so the caucus makes that decision. You two guys are the tandem. What did we learn from the melodrama of the budget standoff between the Speaker and the Senate President this time around? I got my own theories as to how this whole thing happened. I've presented both of those concepts to leaders on both sides of the State House. What was your take?
The Senate, for whatever reason, decided to amend the budget very late in the process, and we in the House felt very comfortable and very strongly that we had already finalized the budget. We had already included a lot of the Senate's priorities in the budget. The Senate Finance Committee passed the budget, and we felt that that was more than enough. And we understand there was some concerns, but those concerns were addressed, and those concerns were accepted, and we relied on that acceptance, and that was that's
well,
how
it was a late
happened.
play by the Senate President, and he probably stepped in it the last day, or the alleged last day of the session, and word squeaked out in mid-morning, as opposed to him throwing it down at 7 o'clock at night, which would have left you kind of flat-footed if he had tagged that amendment unknowingly in the evening. It would have resulted in a different response, would it not have?
Possibly,
but the intel came,
but the Speaker was well aware. Not many things in general. Not many things happening in the State House that you don't know about. It's not exactly known for its secrets, if you know what I mean. Things happen all the time in the State House, and it's basically an institution that has always been something where there's been a constant chatter, constant rumors. So obviously, we were concerned that this was going to happen. The Speaker took appropriate action. I think it was the right action.
Were you consulted?
Consulted by whom? About
by,
what?
by the Speaker in terms of the ball and bat, go home, shut off the computer, and leave for the day?
Yes, the Speaker came in and talked to me just briefly before it. He asked my opinion. I supported him 100%. And by the way, seriously, in all honesty, the entire membership of the House, both the Democratic and the Republican caucus. If you remember that night, Leader Morgan got up and spoke. I spoke to Brian Newberry yesterday. He was very adamant and very strong in his feeling that the House acted appropriately in the right manner, and we got the right result. This was not a partisan issue. This was a interchamber issue.
Yeah, which is a unique drama.
And exactly, and the House Republicans supported the Speaker, as did all the House Democrats.
Now, one of the things that I think is fascinating about it is that the car tax reduction and elimination is at the heart of this controversy. I absolutely understood and actually supported what the Speaker did, because playing around with the process in the not the 11th hour, but the 11th hour and the 59th minute, 59th second, I think was a bad call on the part of the Senate President. You learn by your mistakes, and I think their phony tag of the budget for some kind of rainy day provision on the car tax was silly, because the thing's got to be evaluated every single year anyway in terms of whether it's affordable.
Well, every program that we pass only has a life, and the budget has a life for a year, because every year we have to enact a new budget.
But who's kidding who? I mean, the Speaker and I have had real hard, friendly disagreements about this. I don't see any way, shape, or form in how he's going to be able to take or you guys are going to be able to take $40 million a year, every year, for the next 5.5, 6 years. and eliminate that whole thing without some major structural change to what we're doing here.
Well, you said it. We could have major structural changes, and that could be on the
But they're
positives.
not planned,
But
so it's kind of like
look,
a flyer. You know, it seems to me he helped to save his election with something that he thought would resonate. Now he's convinced himself that this thing is the call of the people, and I'm not so sure it is.
It's the call of the Democrats in the House and the Republicans, because we, you know, when we go elections, we have an election coming up, we go knocking door to door, and I live in Rob Cody's neighborhood, and I represent Rob Cody, who, as you know, has been on your show many, many times, the king of the car tax, and that's Rob's primary issue. But that's also an issue for a lot of other people in my district and a lot of other people over the state. So is this the best possible solution to the car tax problem? Probably not, but it's a workable solution, a solution that passed.
Well, what would be a better solution? I know I have mine. What is yours?
I think that this phase out is the one that we can afford to do. I mean, ideally, I'd like to eliminate the car tax, eliminate the spending. You know, in a $9 billion budget per year, $40 million, I mean, it's a lot to you and I, but $40 million in the context of $9 billion is not that much. So you have to prioritize spending. What are you going to cut? Where are you going to cut? How are you going to spend?
Yeah, but even this budget didn't do that. It left the governor to do $20, $30 million of freelancing on her own.
$25 million. But look, that could also be made up by increased revenue. Twin River is hopefully going to open up a new casino sometime in 2018. We expect some revenue from that, additional revenue that's not budgeted for. In addition to that, we are now, in this budget, collecting taxes on a lot of internet sales. That's something that we didn't really have. That's the whole Amazon thing versus the bricks and mortar. You go buy your box of candy on Amazon, you pay no sales tax. In theory, you're supposed to call up the state and report it. I bought it and pay it, but no one ever does that. Or you go buy it at your local CVS and you pay the tax on it. So now we're going to equal the playing field. So the local mom and pops that have to pay, collect that sales tax will also, the internet sales will as well. So those are additional revenues, and hopefully the economy will continue to grow and get better. I mean, when I drove over here today, I got delayed a little bit because of traffic, because things are getting done, because the bridges are being fixed, the roads are being fixed, traffic, construction on the roads are good, our infrastructure is improving. Rhode Island, and I'll give a little pat in the back to the General Assembly and the administration together, are finally addressing some of our long-term problems, and we are headed into a better, for years, Dan, the state of Rhode Island has been kind of like a little bit going along, sputtering along. We're now doing, you may disagree, as some people on the left or the right may disagree, we are doing bold things, bringing in new companies, new jobs. The General Assembly had a part of that. The administration had a part of that. Things are happening in a good way. The economy is growing in Rhode Island. As the economy grows, our revenues grow. So there's a way we can, getting back to what you said about the car tax and the $40 million, that's how we can afford it.
Look, there's a lot of truth in what you said. Things are better, and if you deny it, you're just not paying attention. I know you're a big Raimondo fan as well. I don't like her picking winners and losers economic plan. I wish we
Do you have a better plan?
I wish we had time. Yeah, there's a better broad-based acceptance of a taxable rate card for businesses of all kinds, shapes, and sizes to be able to pick and choose where they want to be in Rhode Island, as opposed to targeting industry. I mean, for crying out loud, 195 doesn't even have a rate card yet. I mean, that is horrendous.
Okay.
And so those things have got a more fertile, widespread, undetermined playing field for business growth, as opposed to saying this industry, that industry, this industry, and we're going to give these people this money and this people that money.
The program.
Since you asked.
I'm glad I asked, because I'm going to give you the counter argument to that for two points.
Give me 30 seconds, because I got other stuff.
I'll give it to you in less than 30 seconds.
I knew I needed an hour show with you.
I'll come back.
I'm enjoying it.
I'm going to come back. Number one, if we don't incentivize and you don't give tax credits, guess what? Massachusetts will, Connecticut will, New York will, other states are. So we can have the whole debate whether it's good or not, but if we're not in the ball game, guess what? Other people are, and they're going to take our businesses away.
I think that the rules are more too defined for those tax credits.
The second point I want
the industries.
Okay. The second point I want to make is those programs. Now we brought in some great companies, but what gets very less publicized is we've retained and grow Rhode Island companies like A.T. Cross, and there's probably 6 or 7 others I can't think of off the top of my head that are using Ocean State Job Lot. Those are the companies that are staying in Rhode Island, growing in Rhode Island because of those programs.
All right, well, there's an existing business in the baseball industry that's hanging by a thread here. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. All right, so there's a stadium that is the want of the Paw Sox, the city of Pawtucket, which I think would be gorgeous right there in the elbow of 95. We've got a headline here. and we're following Worcester's progress. Their city council last night, without even debate, passed a resolution in the spirit of moving forward to try to lure the Paw Sox to Worcester. The House Speaker has been interestingly ambivalent about this. The Senate is actually moving and shaking. Bill Connolly, who is the finance chairman and representative of East Providence and Pawtucket, is scheduling this kind of parade of rolling hearings around the state, which I think is overkill. What's your take on this deal? I think if you guys don't get your act together, you're going to lose these Paw Sox. And you know what? I understand there's a tepid public response to this right now, so it's kind of a weird political dynamic. But a year or two from now when they go, you guys are all going to be the bad guys. It'll be a post-game response where people say, yeah, even our Paw Sox are
the Monday morning quarterback.
Yeah, of course.
Different metaphor, different sport.
Yeah.
I have spoke on radio, so what I'm telling you is not something new, but I am waiting for the Pawtucket Red Sox and the very bright ownership group and the very talented consultants that they've hired and lobbyists to start some kind of a campaign that sells the deal to the public. And I've actually kind of laid that out. Let's look for an example at Twin River. When Twin River needed voter approval, and I'm not suggesting, or maybe I am suggesting, we'll have to decide that whether we should put it up for a public referendum or not. But Twin River went in the neighborhoods in Tiverton. They had to sell that program to Tiverton. They had to go to every Rotary, every Chamber of Commerce meeting. They had to sell the benefits of that. The Paw Sox are a great organization. Not because I like baseball, you may like baseball. They've been in Rhode Island for 80 years. They generate approximately $1.8 million a year. They want that $1.8 million a year redirected back into a brand new stadium that ultimately the taxpayers will own. They're paying a substantial amount. It's probably, from what I've been told, a little bit.
We agree on all that.
But why haven't they gone out and sold that or told it to the public? Why haven't they come on this show and talked to you? Why haven't they done that in all the other media?
They have come to this show and talked to me. They have shut it down since the offer, or the last model, if you will, was played out. But I know you and I talked about this and the campaign that you think is necessary, and I agree. But right now it's a different dynamic because now they're in a competitive situation. And I'll tell you, if you guys on the House side don't get aggressive on this whole thing, it's going to slip right through your fingers. And if you're going to run around on the Senate side, running hearings all the way until December and not make a move on this till January, I doubt the city of Worcester, with its creative financing and a governor there who's very pro-business, are going to sit around and waiting to see whether or not the legislature convenes specially in the fall or the late winter to pass this thing. So I would like to see the Paw Sox market the idea, but right now there's no tangible even vote for which they would spend that money. I mean, you guys haven't laid a timetable down. It's not like they have a referendum they have to get passed.
I understand that, but here's the difference, okay? We, unfortunately, in Rhode Island are still dealing, to some degree, with a post-38 Studios hangover. Now, this is a totally different deal.
You guys screwed that up 8 ways to Sunday, not disposing of it the way you should have with the proper kind of vetted hearings. But that's spilled milk.
Let's back up, because I want to be very clear.
I only got a minute.
I was not in the General Assembly when 38 Studios, when you said you guys.
I mean, you guys, I mean, how many years do we have to go for
the elected officials at the time.
Well, I mean, the vote itself in 2010 is one thing, but I'm talking about how the 7 years of to clean up the act on the whole thing has been a mess from the get-go. I know you passed some legislation to open up the records, I get it, but I get the 38 dynamic. I get you got a political apathy out there. But you got 20 seconds to tell me how you're going to save the Paw Sox deal.
If they come out in the public and they sell the deal and they sell the quality of their brand and what they have, their history, how little money, and they're redirecting it, and if they leave Rhode Island, that $1.8 million doesn't get paid in Rhode Island. They're not actually, the business model they've outlaid works. They got to sell it to the public.
I got to run. Interesting. Come back soon.
Anytime.
Joe, thanks.
My pleasure.
Final word next. Back to our national security tomorrow night with Mark Janess. See you on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Got to go.